Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God. The Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength. Let's keep the main thing as the main thing. One name, one life, one church, one more. All for one.
Good morning again, everybody. Welcome to Crossroads. I am glad that you're here. If you're joining us online, welcome to Crossroads. We're glad that you chose to spend part of your day with us. You know, I say it that way because certainly I'm imagining that there are maybe a few more people than normal watching online this morning because they heard the hype of the storm, you know, and we're thinking that. But I want you to know we have this growing number of people that watch after Sunday morning. So maybe you're watching on a Wednesday or something like that. And we're just glad that you are with us. One for All is the name of the series of messages that we are talking about as a church going on a journey together. And this is, as you heard, week 4 of this message series. And so here's about a 1-minute recap of the first 3 weeks. Do you think I can do it, Mike? Yeah, he has faith in me. Okay, here we go. Week number 1, we saw that another one is worth it. If you remember, we looked at Jesus healing the hemorrhaging woman and Jairus' daughter, and every individual. We said, as long as there's one person who is lost, hurting, broken, lonely, the love of Jesus has work to do, and the way he chose to do it is through us. Week 2, we said no one should be left behind. This was the idea that every time there's another one, there becomes a one another. The community is the absolute necessity, next step after someone who meets Jesus. And remember the 4 friends who dug a hole through the roof and lowered their friend below to Jesus. And he says, seeing their faith, Jesus healed him. So no one should be left behind. Everyone's got a mat, and everyone with a mat needs some friends. Remember that? Last week, someone needs an invitation. You remember Zacchaeus up in the tree, an outsider by everyone's standards, an outsider. You know what it feels to be an outsider? Most of us do. And Jesus over and over and over again said, here's what I'm about, inviting outsiders to come in. And remember how he did it? He invited himself over to Zacchaeus' house. He said, come on down right now. I must stay at your house today. And Zach says, okay, man. And away they went. And so this is where we've come, that the main thing is one more. And another one is worth it. No one should be left behind. Someone needs an invitation. And then today, we're going to cover this topic. Everyone has a gift. Everyone, in all of these ways, has something unique to bring to what God is doing in the world. So maybe we'll say it this way. This is a statement that has gone along with our one journey, and maybe you've heard it, maybe you haven't. There is no we without you. In fact, everywhere that you're listening to me online, even if you're in your car, say it out loud. It'll, the people in the back seat, who knows what they're doing. But anyway, right here, you guys read it out loud with me, full voice. Ready?
There is no we without you.
Yeah, but you don't usually think that. You really don't. When we use the term we, often it is not something that won't exist without us. Let me give you an example. Some of you are going to watch the Ravens game later on today. And some of you, when you talk about the Ravens, you say we, right? Do any of you play on the Ravens? Would any of you, if you stopped watching the Ravens, would the Ravens cease to exist? Probably not. I'm guessing, Derek. I mean, I know, you're a fan and all, but you're a fan of the Ravens, but you're not a member of the Ravens. Usually when we say we, whether we're a part of it or not doesn't make all that much difference. And when it comes to the church, we just assume that's the same thing, that I'm a fan of the church, or I'm an attender of the church, or I'm a consumer of the church, or I'm a supporter of the church. No, you are the church. There is no we without you. And when that begins to click, a group of people, average, normal, some of us abnormal people, become uniquely usable to God in this world. And there's nothing like it. But we have to understand what makes us unique. And so what I want to do today is use the scripture as our authority to understand this key linchpin for God's design of what the church is supposed to be. Can I just say 30 seconds about every single week when someone gets up here, whether it's me or Kevin or Barrick or Corbin or whoever it is, we use the scripture as our authority, because you shouldn't really care so much about what we think. You should care about what God thinks. And so that's why we do it this way every single week. And so today, I want to start in Romans chapter 12. The Apostle Paul wrote this letter to the Christians in Rome as they were in the most important city in the known world. They were going to have the most impact, probably, just in terms of scope on the increase of the kingdom of God. And he wrote perhaps his most complete treatise about everything that you need to know to be a church in the book of Romans. And chapter 12 is a turning point. Let me read you verses 1 and 2. He says, "Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will." Now, I'm going to pause there for a second. And if you've been around church for any length of time, you might have heard that verse used in a lot of different ways. We've used it around here, and it is important, but often we stop there and don't keep going. Well, and I just did. So you're like, well, you're not doing any better right now. So just hold on. Let me make sure we understand what he's just said, and then we're going to see what he says next. Therefore, what's he saying? Up until now, the first 11 chapters are the gospel, are what the problem is, what the solution is, how the solution is appropriated to us. Fantastic theology. So therefore, because of the saving work of Jesus, Paul says, offer yourself, all of you, to God. Offer yourself to God. A living sacrifice is almost an oxymoron, right? It's something you sacrifice is something that's dead because you've sacrificed it. But this is a living sacrifice. It's ongoing. Offer yourself to God. How? And then it says this, by not conforming, but transforming. Not conforming, but transforming. This is the idea that all of us are changing in one way or another. Every single day, you are changing. The question is how? And because of what? And in which direction are we changing? And so the thesis is you can offer yourself to God in a way that allows him to do the changing. That's what verses 1 and 2 are saying. And then verse 2 says, start here. Think differently. Transform. Start with the way that you think. If you want to offer yourself to God, here's where you can start. Start thinking differently. And this is hard because we're used to thinking in one way. And God says, I want you to start thinking in a different way. And this might be a little bit confusing, but part of the way we're wired in God's plan is that we don't just change with the wind willy-nilly all the time. It's sometimes you have things called habits in your life. Are you aware of some of them? If you're not, ask the person next to you, like some of your habits, and they'll tell you. They'll go, here you go. And what is that? That's a way, sometimes psychologists call it elasticity, that you tend to have a pattern, and to change a pattern, it takes some effort. It's not just a snap of a finger. You don't just say, okay, I'm going to think differently. That doesn't work like that. But if you are going to offer yourself, start with thinking differently, which should beg the question of everyone listening, think different about what? I'm so glad you asked, because that's what verses 3 through 8 are. Now let me tell you what we're supposed to think differently about. Verse 3. For by the grace given me, I say to every one of you, do not think of yourselves more highly than you ought, but rather think of yourself with sober judgment, in accordance with the faith God has distributed to each of you. For just as each of us has one body with many members, and these members do not all have the same function, so we in Christ, though many, form one body, and each member belongs to the others. We have different gifts according to the grace given to each of us. If your gift is prophesying, then prophesy in accordance with your faith. If it's serving, then serve. If it's teaching, then teach. If it's to encourage, then give encouragement. If it's giving, then give generously. If it's to lead, do it diligently. If it is to show mercy, do it cheerfully. So, the first thing that you are supposed to think differently about is you. Think differently about you. Look at verse 3. It says, do not think of yourself more highly than you ought, but rather with sober judgment in accordance with the faith God has distributed to each of you. So here's the good news. The first thing that you are told, and I'm told, that we're to think differently about is the thing that we think of more than anything else, ourselves. And so this should be rather obvious to us because we think about ourselves a lot. And it says there's two errors that you should avoid in thinking about yourself. Number one, don't think too highly of yourself. This talks about the humility that's required to look at yourself through the gospel. Remember, verse 1 said, therefore, in lieu of the gospel, do this, offer yourself, and start here. Think differently. Think about what? Think about yourself. And don't think of yourself too highly. Humility is baked into understanding the gospel. You've heard me say this before. You are way worse than you ever thought. Yeah, that's what the gospel says. Like you're not just a little bit of a slacker in need of some help. You are a black-hearted, wretched sinner. And deep down, you do know that. You hope that nobody else finds out. And you're doing your best to cover up to your own self that that's actually how bad it is. But here's the truth. Let me just be, I'm not pointing my finger at you anymore. Let me just tell you about me. Even the best things that I do often come from bad motives, or at least selfish motives. When I go to serve, it's so that I either feel better about myself, I can check a box and go, yeah, look, I feel better because I did that. Or so somebody else would feel better about me. They expect this of me, so I'm going to do it. Not at all the care of who I'm serving. Often in our world, when we say, I'm going to love someone, it's really just someone who will give me great feedback and affirmation for my actions towards them. I need their reaction. Hard to love when someone isn't giving you that feedback loop. This happened to me last night around 10 o'clock. So you know it wasn't in the notes, right? I'm laying sitting on the couch with my wife and our dog, and I just go over and I pet the dog, and the dog snarls at me and tries to bite my hand. 10 o'clock last night. Yeah. And the feeling that came over me was, are you freaking kidding me? I'm the one who feeds you. I walked you in the rain today. Do you understand that? And so it was very hard to love the dog at that point. You understand what I'm saying? I treat the dog a certain way because I want the dog to respond to me in a certain way. If the dog doesn't respond to me, I have trouble. Now, I got over it, and you don't have to, send me emails about that. But here's what I want you to see. Sometimes even my best efforts are from selfish motives. I'm way worse than I ever thought. And that's part of the gospel. Sober judgment was the term that was used, as opposed to impaired judgment. Right? And so think about if someone who's not an addict or an alcoholic or something, they just decide, I'm going to go get drunk as a skunk tonight. Do you know usually the reason? Because reality has gotten too close. Reality has gotten too heavy, and I don't want to deal with reality. I want to escape reality. Well, the scripture says, think of yourself with sober judgment. That means the good and the bad. That means understanding all the nuances of who you are and how you work. So not only don't think too highly of yourself, but don't think too lowly of yourself either. Because God has said, you are an image bearer of mine. You are way worse than you ever thought because you have been marred by sin. But you are way more loved than you ever dared hope because you have a Savior. And so think of yourself with sober judgment, not too low or too high. If you understand that about yourself, then this next part just flows. So God put his Spirit in you. God placed, not only gave you a Savior, but took up dwelling in your actual life. Not your Sunday life, but like your actual life. And therefore, God has put something in you that is actually not even for you, that needs to get out of you. It's the spiritual gifts that come with God's presence residing inside you. I love this quote from J.D. Greear. He said, God didn't save you to sanitize you and set you on his sanctified shelf. He saved you to send you into service. You want to offer yourself to God? Start here. Don't think too highly of yourself. Don't think too lowly of yourself, but understand you have the greatest privilege on the planet of being the indwelling place of God's Holy Spirit. And so there's something he's put in you that actually isn't for you, that needs to get out of you. Well, what does that look like? I'm glad you asked. It's the second thing you should think differently about. Second, think differently about everyone else. And I mean everyone else. The people that you like, the people that you don't like. The people that are close to you, the people that you hope you never get close to. The people that agree with you, the people that don't agree with you. The people that are nice, the people that are mean. You need to think differently about everyone else. Why? Because that's what a good Christian does. No! Because God's Spirit actually lives in you. And you've been given something that's not for you, that's for them. It's for everyone else. And in verse 5, this is what it says. In Christ, we, though many, form one body, and each member belongs to all the others. The two words here, so important. The first word, member. This is not like membership. This is not like I didn't renew my membership, so the heck with those people. This is members of your body, like organs. Like your liver can't just say, I'm not going to re-up this whole body thing, I'm done with you. Well, I mean, I guess you can, but then you would die unless you got a liver transplant. I'm off schedule now. Here, hold on. Member is something that is actually knit together as part of a body. It's an organ. It's a digit. It's a limb. And you know this, that if you just walked out in the hallway and you saw a hand lying there, no one would go, oh, look at that hand. You would go, something is very, very wrong. Just like if you saw somebody walking around with like a bloody stub on the end of their arm, you'd go, this is not right. That's what member means. And that's why this word is used, that every member belongs to the others. Now, most of us don't like that in America. We want individuality and freedom. And these two things are not in discord. The things that we talk about as a nation and the things that God talks about as a kingdom, these in this way aren't discordant. It means that you belong to them in the kingdom, life-embracing picture of who God's created you to be in whatever country you live in. You can't do it on your own. It's impossible. It's just literally impossible to do. In Ephesians chapter 4, same writer, Paul says, you've been given these gifts to build up the body. What you've been given is for other people. And you can't even express the thing that God has given to you if there's no one else to express it to. It's literally impossible. You need one another in order to be able to let out what God has worked into you. It's the only way that it works. And so, number one, you need to think differently about yourself. And number two, you need to think differently about everyone else. And then number three, you need to act differently because you think differently. That this gets worked out in action. This is maybe the first time that verses 6 through 8 struck me the way that they did when I read them. Look at verses 6 through 8. It seems rather redundant. It says, if you have the gift of serving, then you should do what? Serve. All right, okay. If it's teaching, then what should you do? Do you see a pattern? Next verse. If it's encouraging, then give encouragement. If it's giving, then give. If it's leading, then lead. What's the point here? The point is that you are given gifts to use them. And here, this might sound so simple. Use the one you got, not the one you don't got. Right? You are uniquely gifted by God, and that's what you need to use, not something that you don't have. So I love this. It says, if your gift is encouragement, well, then don't try to manage something because you should just go encourage people. Maybe you don't have this gift over here. There's lots of gifts I do not have, and my staff tell me all the time. Like when I'm in that role, they're like, that's not good. Let Nancy do that. Let Mary do that. They're much better at that than you are. And it's right. And so part of my message here today is use the gift that you got, but use it. That your gifts that have been given by God are not to study, debate, compare. They're to use for others. That's the way that you were built. And so let me clarify just one thing. Most of the gifts are a unique aptitude for doing something that all Christ followers are called to do generally. It's a unique aptitude to do something specifically that most Christ followers are called to do generally. Because, look, when I put encouragement up here, and you're like, oh, not my gift. I get a pass on that one, right? If I put serve, you're like, yep, nope, not a server. How about give? You're like, oh, see, I'm off the hook. That whole thing that James did, at the beginning. I'll let somebody who has the gift of giving. They can do that. The point is that all of us are supposed to serve and give and encourage and love. But some people have that unique aptitude for it, And you know it when you see it. People who have the gift of evangelism. Like we'll do like the Go Fish series. Remember that? And tell everybody that everyone who follows fishes, and it's just completely true. But some of you are better fishermen than others, right? Some people, even though we all do it, they sit next to someone, in a movie theater, and by the end of the movie, the person knows Jesus. And you don't even see him talking, during the thing. And you're like, how does this happen? Like, I've been meeting this person for 5 years, and I don't. So it's not a pass that you get. It is, though, a responsibility that you have when you can identify what are my uniquenesses in the body, and am I using them? Okay, maybe the million-dollar question. Well, how do I know? How do I know what I'm gifted to do? Well, two things. One, we're going to give you an easy way to take a test. Lots of you like taking tests and getting feedback. Some of you hate it. If you hate it, stay tuned. There's point number 2. But if you would like to take a spiritual gifts test, simple, free, and easy, here's the way you do it. And you can get your phone out right now. You're allowed. You text gifts to this number. I'm going to leave this up here for a moment. Here's what you will find. You'll find a simple questionnaire that will spit back to you some suggestions of gifts that are listed in the Bible that you might be uniquely granted by God for the people around you, for everyone around you. And so that's a starting point. If this spits back something, I'll share in a minute, that no one else agrees with around you, you might want to go with the people who actually know you versus the text. But this is a great place to start. But number 2, let me give you a Venn diagram of, remember that in geometry class or something like that? There are 3 components that almost every time I see someone flourishing in their use of spiritual gifts, this is where it comes from. And it starts with your heart. Like, what are you passionate about? What just gets your heart beating faster? That's probably a good place to start. For some of you, it's what do you complain the most about? Yeah. Complaining is not a spiritual gift. I've looked it up. It's not in there. And you don't need a spiritual gift to tell people what's wrong. Most people are pretty good at that, seeing what's wrong. But it might be a clue to what breaks your heart, what God has wired you to care about inordinately. And that might be a wonderful thing. So start with your heart. And then your ability. This might be a unique skill set. It might simply be experience. You might not have some unique, like you can sing really well, but you might have visited someone and prayed in the hospital over and over and over again. And so you now have an ability that is unique. So it could come from a skill set. It could come from experience. But when you put together your heart and your ability, you're getting pretty close to honing in on what has God wired you to do. But then add this one, your relationships, in two ways. Number one, often God will gift you and prompt you, nudge your heart because of the needs of people around you, that you might be the answer to their prayer. You usually don't think of yourself in that way. Sometimes you're the answer to your prayer, that you're praying for someone else. And God will give you different gifts in different seasons of life based on your relationships. And then second, this is an affirming arm of the whole process. That if you say, I have the gift of leading a small group, and every time you lead a small group, everyone stops coming, and you go, well, they just didn't get the gift of coming to my small group. No. Affirmation is a part of understanding how God has wired and gifted you. Okay, so what's the point? The point is, if to offer yourself to God, for us to be the church that he's called us to be, there is no we without you. And we need for you to use your gifts. So there's a test you can take. There's a diagram you can take with you in your mind. And there's the Spirit of God that lives in you. And so I'm going to pray right now that we're attentive to his Spirit. Let's pray together. Jesus, you said before you left the planet that we would do greater things than you did while you were here because you live in us after you left. And I know that the church was what you had in mind. Not just this church, but the church. And I pray that you would prompt our hearts now, that we are your body here, active and alive right now. We want to do it really well. Speak to our hearts. We pray in your name. Amen.